I've got it. I've got
Okay.
it. It is recording now.
Yeah, it scared me last week. I thought I'd lost it.
Yeah, well, I don't know why. That is one of the things that I have the biggest fear of. But if it happens, it just happens. I mean, we can't help it. And I don't know what it is in my area, but there is something. I've got to call the cable company because I can be in the middle of something and just my internet will just go out. And I don't know what it is. It's not with my computers. It's got to be in the, in the system. So, but anyway, I'm praying tonight it doesn't go out. So if it does, just keep on going.
We will.
I'm not far from you, Dr. Stedman. The same thing is happening over here, and I have high winds over here.
Yeah, it's been like that since the hurricane.
Yes.
It has not changed, Jody, since the hurricane. So.
So the eastern part of the state still having high winds and.
No,
yes,
but it's been the weather has still been unusual. I don't know, and even with people with respiratory issues, I don't know. The hurricane did something to the climate here because I think that is why I have not been well. It's due to whatever happened during that time because I have not been well since before and after that hurricane. So, but anyway.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, okay, we're going to go ahead and let me pull this up first. Okay, let me get weak.
Hello, Dr. Revis.
Hey, Dr. Revis, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Okay. Okay, welcome to our weekly Zoom class. This is week 4. I was thinking just earlier today that we're 1/4 of the way through with this semester already. It is going by quickly. But welcome. We have a packed schedule for this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and just basically outline what we're going to be doing. Dr. Stone has a great presentation in just a few minutes, and then we're going to talk briefly about where we are up to this point with your assignments. We're going to review task 2 briefly, and then we're going to delve into task 3, which you'll be working on this week. And then Dr. Lamb's going to join us shortly, and he's going to be sharing with us the expectations for the actual task 1 and 2, where you do your collaborative Zoom video. And then he's going to talk about the case study requirements. And then Dr. Stone's going to bring some closure, and he has something else that he's going to present as a resource tool. And then if Dr. Revis has anything to share, she can join in at any time and share whatever she would like to share as well. Just want to talk briefly about where we are with our assignments at this point. Just wanted to know, I was pretty pleased with the work that came in this weekend. I've gotten, most everybody is on track. There's a few that's not, but we've communicated and they know who they are and they know what they've got to do this week. The biggest thing is that that you pace yourself, you stay on pace, because remember that if you get 1 week behind, that means that it's hard to catch up, especially when the next week you've got another task to do with that evidence. So please pace yourself and try to stay up. And remember also that when you fail to do what you're supposed to do, that it hinders the people in your Zoom group, and they can't always do what they're supposed to do with their Zoom group. However, please be reminded that we're not going to hold them hostage, and we've encouraged everybody, if that becomes the case, then you reach out to us and let us know, and we're going to put you in touch with somebody even in another Zoom group if it means that you need to do that to move forward with your work. I feel like that after this week, that anybody that is still struggling to get to a place, I feel like after this week, that most of you, if not all of you, should be at that place. But overall, the work is good. Just remember with task 2 that a lot of it has, your work has been approved, but you have not presented it to your administration yet. You must present it to your administration. You must resubmit it for Dr. Stone and me to look at it and to see that you have made that presentation and that there is a PowerPoint embedded in your work as well. So if that has not been done, remember that that is a requirement before you can get final permission to submit it for a final grade. And many of you have already done that, and many of you have already cleared task 2. With that in mind, Dr. Stone, do you have anything to say about the assignments up to this point?
I've just enjoyed seeing the work that you're doing, and a lot of you have put a lot of time and energy into this, and you're taking it quite seriously. You're using it for the betterment of your school. So I've been impressed with that, and I just echo what Dr. Stedman said, is don't let things get behind, or don't let your Zoom group hold you back. If they're not doing their part, let us know, and we'll try to make connections, because we don't want that to hold you back. And so if that's happening, let us know.
Okay. And as you see on the screen, week 4, look at your assignments. This is what will be due by Sunday of this week. And many of you have already completed these tasks. Your APSL Task 2 revision is due to Dr. Stone and me. And this means that by the end of this week, that Task 2 should be completed. You shouldn't have to do anything else to task 2. It should be submitted for final grade, and that goes to your APSL assignment Dropbox. Your APSL task 3 draft, which we're going to talk about tonight, will be due in discussion board as well by Sunday night. And then your APSL task 2 peer reviews, 2 from 2 different people in your Zoom group, are due as well. And again, many of you have already taken care of that. Please be reminded, most of you are doing an excellent job with this. Please be reminded that you should take your peer reviews seriously, and make sure that you are providing good, solid feedback to the author that they could use if they chose to. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stone at this time.
Okay, let me find my sharing. Okay.
Okay, did y'all see this question from Amber?
Okay,
She said, should we include information about the presentation in the narrative? If so, where?
okay, at the, and I'm looking, that would be at the end, after the most pressing need, then there should be, that's where they would put it, after the most pressing need. That's where they can talk about it then, because that's where they would conclude with their presentation.
Yeah, and now if you have some sort of a hard copy presentation, that would go into the appendices.
That's
Don't
right.
stick it in the narrative right there.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Lamb.
You're welcome.
All right, so I wanted to take the next probably 10 minutes to talk about the ESSA, which you're all familiar with, and the reason why I wanted to spend some time with you about that is as you begin to develop these tasks and you develop through 601, 603, 605, you'll see oftentimes it's where did all these requirements come from? What is driving education nationally, which also drives North Carolina, drives South Carolina. So I wanted to spend a little time because this is fairly the EESA, or the ESSA, the Every Student Succeed Act, was a 2015 signed by President Obama. It is the current school reform, federal reform act that we are operating by. Quick point, anybody remember what the major education initiative was before the ESSA under George Bush? Anybody just
No Child Left Behind.
No Child Left Behind. That was created in 2002, built upon on bipartisan support, and then but you began to get a lot of feedback that it wasn't working. The one size fits all. A lot of states were complaining about some of the rigidness of the No Child Left Behind. But No Child Left Behind was the precursor for the ESSA, the Every Student Succeed Act. And so in 2015 passed bipartisan support, and it was a reauthorization of the ESEA, which was 50 years old. So I wanted to take you through it because this is sort of the driving federal force in public education. And if you don't believe it drives your state or your public school system, you would be fooling yourself, because if you aren't participating, then the federal dollars don't flow to you. So it is a very important national educational reform that all of us are involved in every one of our districts has to be. So there's a great article which I'll share with you a little later on, but this is the ESSA, a major points about it that I wanted you to be aware of as you begin to develop your evidences and your artifact, putting together your artifacts. The purpose of the ESSA was accountability. There are three main things. When this was passed in 2015 under the Obama administration, what parents were telling the federal government and our legislators was that they really wanted for schools to be clearer and more transparent. So this particular ESSA is the main way for school systems to communicate expectations and for the federal government to establish some expectations and also to push districts along the way. It's easy to ignore a federal initiative if you're hidden amongst the many, many thousands and thousands of districts in the nation, but the ESSA holds us a lot more accountable for it. They set expectations about what it means to be a good school. They set expectations about what your school should be doing. And the most important thing I think that you'll see is a continuation of No Child Left Behind, because I wasn't a big fan of No Child Left Behind when it first came out, because I felt like it was rigid, a lot of accountability, a lot of test, retest. But the one thing that No Child Left Behind really did force school districts and superintendents and principals and assistant principals and even teachers was to look at every single group of students. No longer could you look at your school and say that school was performing well because the vast majority of the students were upper class students and performing well. Now you have to look at every single subgroup within that school, and that school is progressing only as well as every one of those subgroups are progressing. So for the first time, it really made some very successful school districts say, oh, yes, but we're failing our African-American males. Oh, we're not doing so well with our exceptional children. So we couldn't hide those subgroups anymore. We had to own that we weren't performing for them. So that's the one thing that I took away from No Child Left Behind, that it really was the major change that came about. The ESSA continues that, and that it has a clear expectation that all groups of students must make progress. The other piece that it goes one step further, though, and that is it says that not only is everyone to make progress, but for those who are behind, they have to make progress plus. So it's a great initiative to make sure that we don't just live with the fact that some kids are behind, that we have to have active plans to help those kids get where they are. So that's the part of the accountability of the ESSA, and it is the policies and procedures that a state sets aside. In North Carolina, we have a grading system, the A through F grading system through our North Carolina General Assembly, and that's how the public, in an easy way, the public can look. Now, I have real problems with the A through F grading system. A stands for affluent, F stands for poor. In North Carolina, when you look at the statistics of the A through F school districts, if the school is in an affluent community, the chances of them making an A are phenomenally much higher than if they're in a poor community. So that's just a part of the accountability system that North Carolina employs, but that's because North Carolina employs a system that's based on not growth, but performance, more on performance than it is on growth. That's changing. There's been a lot of push in North Carolina, or the 5-star system. So the reason for this is that they want it to be a clear system so John Q. Public can say, oh, my school's making this letter grade, because all of us have made an A in our life, most of us. All of us have probably made the C's and the B's and the D's. A couple of us may have made an F. I will admit to making one myself in school. So we know what that means. Anybody with any kind of grade education would know what an F school should look like. So this is kind of penalized, and this is what I don't like about it, but this is the accountability system. And also they have to have a system where there are some rewards for those that are performing well, and that there are strong interventions for those that are struggling. The accountability systems with ESSA, which is exactly what it is, it says that you have to set clear expectations for all children, not just some. Again, that emphasis on the subgroups, but it also have to, the last bullet talks about helping those subgroups that have traditionally been behind, struggling districts, struggling schools, that the district has to spend more resources on those struggling schools, and the state has to spend more resources on struggling school districts. But it is also about effective communication, making sure that parents are well aware. And if you're familiar with ESSA, there are a lot of letters we have to send out for every grade that we as a school system receive, or you as a school will receive. There's a grade that we have to send out. This is powerful stuff when you're starting to put together your evidences for these two, for the two products and evidences that you're going to do for, and the artifacts that you're going to do for those evidences that you're going to do for these two courses. You need to look and see how you're doing with the EESA. But it also has celebration components and prompt action for those who are not meeting it. The accountability system holds that states have to be accountable for all groups of students. Again, states have to put out those performance grades that are based on the assessments as well as graduation rates for every student. And they have to show, and this is the big part that changed from No Child Left Behind, not only do you have to pull all of your subgroups together, but they must show higher gains for the groups who are further behind. And specifically, it addresses English language learners or English proficiency for those who are behind in English language. It also says that you have to have another academic indicator for elementary and middle schools. That could be attendance or parent-parental involvement, and additional indicators for school quality. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility where you can move beyond the basic assessments of testing data. The EESA also establishes these school ratings that are public, very, very public, are published. And again, all goes back to the fact that if there's some underperforming groups, that the rating has to reflect, and it has to be very clear to the public in your community what subgroups aren't making the progress. I want to stop real quickly to make sure everybody is seeing my screen. I remember last week I talked for about 5 minutes and you all didn't have my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome, awesome. It also says that states have to identify 3 types of schools, and I hope that none of your schools are in any one of these categories, but the very low performing schools, they're the bottom 5% of the schools in this county or the schools in the state. The schools that are consistently
I got your tickets if you don't want that to pepper.
at the bottom. Can everybody eat, please?
You didn't feel any? All right, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Dr. Stedman. So those are the things that a school has to do. And the reality about this is when your school is sending out those letters to parents, this is driven by the ESSA because you have to be very transparent with parents. And all of that data that you're reviewing for your PLCs, all of that should be transparent data that parents or anybody in your community could pick up and look at. That data, that information belongs to your public. It doesn't necessarily just belong in the school building, and it shouldn't be there. So the work of your PLCs should be far-reaching. The school improvement, and it sets out, the ESSA sets out the school improvement process. There are 5 components to it. I am sure if you are involved in a school improvement team or as you begin this is also some guidance for your PLCs. It involves the 5 steps of diagnosis. You diagnose what the meaningful information, which is exactly what you're doing in your 2 evidences that your 2 products that you're going to create for this course. An understanding of what the underlying, do you remember that from part A of your APSL? You had to identify the most pressing need. That's a part of the diagnosis of what you're doing. Then you have to make a plan. Again, this just fits in perfectly with what we're asking you to do with the APSL and the APDAL. You have to develop that plan, and it should be done through a collaborative effort, which is your PLCs, a plan for implementation, and then to take it even further for your school or your district as a monitoring plan And then that last part goes back to that heart of the ESSA, and that is that those who are behind, you got to get on the boat and accelerate those even more so. So it has to have the intensified action process as well. The key components, there has to be a timeline. The ESSA gives schools 1 year to do a planning stage, and after that, you've got to really get going because there are some components to it that will reward and punish. The meaningful assessments, meaningful needs assessments, you have to have those, and those need to be done routinely to make sure that you engage the full community and to look at information beyond the testing data. You have to make sure that your plans are evidence-based. That's why in this particular course and all courses you take at Gardner-Webb, you're going to see a heavy emphasis on evidence-based strategies, evidence-based research. It's because that's what the federal government, that's what the state governments are requiring as you become a school leader. You've got to have evidence for why you believe they'll work and why they are needed. And then the kinds of support, very important, the resources. And when you develop in 605 and other courses, you'll see that we start asking you to identify resources for your improvement plans. And then, of course, there has to be benchmarks to show how well you're doing. This is almost over. You've got to have exit criteria for the high schools, and you've got to show that you are moving those low-performing schools and you're helping them move along quickly, and you've got to do more for the bottom 5%. And there's penalties. If you're an F for a couple of years, you get penalized. Other key components that you've got to, the federal government now requires that you strategically plan for the use of your resources. And that means that some of the schools in your districts will not, equity doesn't necessarily mean everybody gets the same. It means that the schools who need it, the schools who have the greatest need, who can demonstrate the greatest need, should be the schools who get the most resources. ESSA had about $1 billion in school improvement funds. Many of the states have applied for those, and there is some discretion as long as you follow the standards of the EESA. The last couple of slides are North Carolina and South Carolina. The first two slides are North Carolina. If you want to see the EESA money coming to North Carolina, I believe this is in 2018. You can see exactly 2018 actual with the estimate for 2019 and 20. This is important because in North Carolina, the districts will be certainly getting the money from the state. There's the first continuation of the programs for North Carolina. If you look, and if this is open to you, South Carolina has identified where its money will go in the great state of South Carolina. It's 2 pages of that with the notes. Each state had to submit their plan and had to be approved individually. North Carolina was kind of late in getting its plan approved. South Carolina was fairly early. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, if you want to read North Carolina's plan, there's a link to it. If you want to read South Carolina's, there's a link there as well. And a couple of websites that are important to understand ESSA. And again, I want to wrap up by kind of reiterating why ESA is important, because that is the federal initiative and that is driving education funding. That is driving educational policy. Because if you believe that your district would give up federal money and not follow, if they take federal money, they follow ESSA. And your district cannot afford to give up. The average, I think, is about 35% of federal money most districts get. If you have a huge population of free and reduced, you get a lot more. So your district is not going to give it up. And so this federal legislation will be driving public education for some time. So it's important as you develop your plans and your evidences that you have an understanding, I think, of what the ESSA does and what it requires you to do as a school principal, or if you are in a school administrative position, central office, what it requires of you. It does have some requirements for you as a principal. And so if your principal looks stressed, pulling their hair out, getting a lot of gray hair, you might want to ask them about ESSA because it drives what we do. Any questions for me on ESSEA? I believe it's open on my, is it? All right, Dr. Stebbin, I'll give it back over to you. I've stopped sharing, I believe.
Whoa, I have questions.
Okay.
I got to get back on here. I want you to reiterate, what is the source of these funds?
They're federal funds.
There you go. Next semester, you're going to be with me in school law and finance, budget, and we're going to talk about the different sources of funds, state, federal, state, local, school, derived funds. We're going to talk about those and what you do with them. And we're going to have a case study very similar to what because of what Dr. Stone just covered with ESSA, we put a new case study in. But I want you to remember, these differentiated funds that go to at-risk children are federal dollars. And that does not conflict with the Leandro ruling in North Carolina, which is the benchmark case nationally. I want to go ahead and prompt you now on that one because I don't want to have to fight that fight with you next semester. These funds are differentiated, are coming from the federal government, not state funds, not local. That's a different story. And that's why these these federal funds are there. We're going to talk about funding next semester, but please remember, as Dr. Stone covered very thoroughly, it's to differentiate and give kids that need more to give them more. But the source of the funds is federal. Okay? Everybody's got that, then we shouldn't have a problem next semester when we cover Leandro.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Stone. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Dr. Lamb, while I am speaking, will you take charge and pull up for me the APSL template for task 3, and then I also want to see my APSL be ready to show the while he's doing that, I want to go ahead and talk. What I want you to do, and this is a segue into everything that Dr. Stone has just said, and I like the word that he used, diagnosis. What I want you to think about for the next just a few minutes is I want you to consider yourself the chief surgeon of a hospital. Dr. Lamb has come to you and he said, I have a sick school. And that's what he did in task 1 of the APSL. He said, I've got a sick school. And as the chief surgeon, what you did, you pulled all of the experts together. That was your team that you pulled together. You pulled them together and you began thinking about and looking at what Dr. Lamb had told you. He said, I've got a sick school. And that's when you got to task 2, after you had pulled the experts together, which is your PLC team, you pulled them together and you took x-rays of that school, you took blood work of that school, you did everything that you could, because Dr. Lamb knew that there was a problem, or there were problems, that there was some sickness there, but he just didn't know, everything. So that was the whole purpose of the team, to look at it and to diagnose what, like Dr. Stoney said, to diagnose what the problem or the problems were. Now, in the process of that, we know that in a school that there are often many problems, but you can't always address them all. And that's why you had to come up with the most pressing need, the one that you felt like was that you needed to handle the most. Now, one of the things that I thought about this week as you are working with the most pressing need, do you know sometimes, and this is even with ourselves, if we've got a medical condition and we deal with the most pressing need, it might be that, somebody may have, be a diabetic and they may have high blood pressure at the same time. But if you attack one of those areas and you begin eating healthy and you begin doing what you need to do, then guess what? While you're taking care of that problem, some of the other problems begin being taken care of. And so when you've got several things going on, when you focus on that most pressing need, many times it will filter down and some of those other problems will begin taking care of themselves. And that's where you are at this point. And that brings us to task 3. Now, task 3 has 2 parts. Dr. Lamb, if you'll come on down to prompt 1. You've got 2 things that you've got to do. Okay, can you come on down just a little bit more? Prompt 1, candidates, you're going to create an annotated bibliography.
All right, but I'm sorry, I was muted. Let me point this out before we get there, Dr. Stedman.
Okay.
And I bolded it and I've highlighted it and I've made it big.
Mm-hmm.
And so We want a literature review and. So you start with a literature review, what you did, tell us what you did and what you reviewed, and then you present your annotated bibliography. Don't just start with an annotated bibliography. That's not how you write professionally. You got to tell us about your literature review first. All right, now go.
Okay, and with that in mind, you're going to create an annotated bibliography that's going to, and again, you have diagnosed your most pressing need. Your annotated bibliography and everything that you're going to do from this point on is going to be related to what you have already done in task 2. You've said, this is my problem. So everything you do in task 3 should refer back to what you said the problem was in task 1. So your annotated bibliography, which will be, you've got to have a minimum of 5 resources there and then 3 online resources. Every one of these things should be related to what you said your problem was. You're trying to figure out ways of correcting the problem. If it's a sickness, you've got to find medicines that's going to heal the sickness. It's the same thing. You're looking for resources that's going to take care of the problem. So your annotated bibliography, all your resources there are going to be related to that identified problem. Your research is going to be related to the problem that you've identified. You're looking, what do the experts say? What's out there? What is out there? What are the experts saying? If it was if somebody went to the doctor and it was a heart problem, then they're going to look. The doctor's going to look and see what is the best research out there in dealing with heart issues. So you're going to find the research that is most related to your problem. Your research-based, your technology-based programs. Sometimes even, again, I'm going to use the medical terminology. If you go to the doctor, they don't always have an answer to begin with. They have to try things. And these technology-based programs that you're going to look for, you don't know till you try them. So you're going to look and see what some of the best stuff that's out there, research-based, evidence-based stuff that's out there that we can possibly use that will help attack the problem that we've identified. Make sure when you are doing your work that somebody asked the question, yes, you must include a minimum of 5 regular resources and a minimum of 3 online resources for your annotations, and then for your research is a minimum of 3 references in that, but it can be more, but a minimum of 3. And I would think that your references in your research and your annotations may be some of the same, Dr. Lamb. It doesn't matter. They may be different.
Yeah, they can be some of the same.
They would be some of the same.
Let me talk to you just a minute about what it looks like when you write this.
Okay.
When you start task 3, I want to see a section that says literature review. And in that section that says literature review, you say, our most pressing need is fluency. I researched schools who had problems with fluency, and they said that what worked best for them was phonics. What would I expect my annotated bibliography to be about? Different phonics programs. But you've got to set it up. You can't just start with phonics. We have no context. So your literature review redefines your most pressing need and says, I looked at all these different resources and online articles and different programs school had run, and they said phonics was the answer for them. Then I'm looking at the best kind of phonics program that I could use for my school, because they're not all the same. That's just an example. But that's why you've got to have a literature review first that sets it up. My most pressing need, this is what a lot of schools are doing now. I'm going to look at different types of those programs or that instructional methodology or that program. I'm going to look at individual ones of those, and I'm going to annotate those bibliographies. That's the way a professional literature review / annotated bib. That's the way it flows in your paper. If you don't do it that way, they'll come back to us. If you just review literature generally and don't have annotated bibliography, or if you do that and don't do the review of literature and don't connect the two, they'll send that back. There's got to be a connection there. That's just me, and now I'm going to hush.
That's great. And Dr. Lamb, if you would, that's all we need to say there. If you would go back and show them the resources that we have provided them over to the side, APA format materials. Again, annotated bibliography, APA. If you'll click on that. This tells you everything you need to know, and if you'll come on down, it gives examples of sample APA annotations, what they look like. There's further details. As you read more in that and click on the links, it tells you more and more about, the annotations if you need to know more information. But it's embedded with lots of information that you need in order to be able to do your annotations and do them correctly according to APA. Dr. Stone, do you have any question or any comments about task 3 that you would like to make?
I do not. I don't know if Dr. Revis may have some or not, but
Dr. Revis, do you have anything that you would like to add to that? It's pretty much self-explained in the work that we have provided.
No, I think you guys have gone over it very nicely.
Dr. Revis is an expert on the grading of these, by the way. She truly is. She's an expert. She's been trained. She's an expert on the evaluation of these evidences. And so,
thank you, Dr. Lamb. I don't consider myself an expert, but I do appreciate your comment about setting the stage and setting text, because as an evaluator, a blind evaluator, if you don't tell what we're looking at, we're just guessing.
They don't know, and that's the only reason we hardly ever get an app cell sent back is you just started with an annotated bibliography in task 3. You didn't set it up. You didn't tell them what your most pressing need is. You didn't tell them what literature you reviewed to try to find a solution before you started your annotated bibliography, and they don't know. And so they'll send those back and say, you've got to give us a setup here. You've got to explain how you got to this particular annotated bibliography. If you don't, they're going to come back. I can tell you right now. And that's why I can't highlight that enough times, that a literature review that sets it up, and then your annotated bibliography. It has to flow where you bring that evaluator along with you as they're reading through the paper, and they don't have to roll back and forth and hunt like I do when I'm going over your task. Did I see that? I don't know. I didn't think I saw that. And I have to go back. If you do that to your evaluators, they'll just send it back. They don't get paid to be aggravated like I do. They want to read through it and it all be laid out for them. Make it easy on your evaluators. Make it easy for them to give you good grades. Don't make them have to hunt to give you a good grade. That's part of this process is when you're given a set of directions from the district, when you are a principal in a district, can you follow those directions and give it back to them clearly? And that's part of this. And as Dr. Stone was pointing out, everybody's got to write a plan now to do this. Just like we're teaching you, your principal has to do this now as well. We're teaching you how to write this plan. This is, I call it the closing the gap plan from ESA. This is what this is. And you've got to be clear, just like you're writing this app cell, you got to do that for real when you're a principal. And it better make sense. I mean, this is real life stuff now.
That's right. Dr. Lamb, some questions. Sean says the literature review will be a heading at prompt number 1, followed by the annotated bibliography.
That's
As Dr.
correct.
Lamb has said, yes.
Yes, that's what
Sharon,
we want to see. Set
yeah,
it up
Sharon
for
asked
them.
a
Don't
question.
just jump right in it. That's why the directions say a literature review and
Right.
an annotated bibliography. That they're not the same thing. We have a hard time getting students. I mean, it could be just as simple as my most pressing need is. I looked at, is fluency. I did a literature review. I mean, is fluency is my most pressing need. I looked at all these studies, and most of them said that what worked best for them was phonics. These are the phonics programs or articles about phonics, different programs that I reviewed in my annotated bibliography. And your reader and your evaluator can follow along with your logic. You went from A to B to C to D. You didn't just jump in at D and expecting us to catch on. Evaluators don't like that.
Yeah.
Superintendents don't like that when you file plans and expect them to just to assume that you know how they got there. You got to take me through the steps.
Sharon asked the question. She says, for the multiple graphic organizers and visuals, are those to be completed by the PLC evidence and uploaded, or templates that were used? Those multiple graphic organizers should be things or resources that you find as you're doing your annotations, and you can be pulling. In fact, when you get your 3 evidence-based, technology-based programs, there should be some resources built in those that you will be able to embed in prompt 2 and use. But it's anything that you find that is related to your annotations and the work that you're doing there. And Amber asked the question. She said, so we need 5? No, not 5 programs plus 3 allotted. It's 5 resources, annotations that are, and that could be a book, it could be a journal, it could be anything. But then you've got to have 3, your 3 technology-based programs is what we're talking about. And again, remember we used the examples of, and it can be lots of them. You've got Study Island, you've got Edmentum, you've got Plato, you've got all kinds of technology-based programs, and then there's a lot more out there that I'm not even familiar with. But that's what we're talking about, and embedded in those, when you do your research, there should be visuals and graphic organizers that you can pull from those resources to use as well. Dr. Lamb, did that answer that okay to you?
Yes. Okay. And remember, you can go to Bulldog 1, the library tab in Blackboard.
Right.
You can go to Bulldog 1, right here under the library tab, Bulldog 1, and it'll have everything you want. I mean, you can sit there and look at that. I just typed in fluency and got 10 right there. Books, an article, and then there's more. Look at these. I mean, I just, and I would, I have these, and so my most pressing need is reading fluency. I typed in fluency, I do a review of literature, and I explain I reviewed it, and then, that most of them talked about phonics, and so if that's one, I read some of these, and they say phonics was our best, and so then I just simply go to phonics, and then I would cite 2 or 3 of these articles that said phonics is the key, and then I would go in and do phonics. Let's do phonics instruction and see what we get.
Dr. Lamb, while you're
there,
looking at that, I wanted to let them know much of what you're doing with task 3, Much of it will be independent work because you're doing this, and then you will share this with your PLC team. Don't wait on that. This part of it belongs to you. You've got to do this research, and then you share your research with your team. So much of what you're doing in this task you'll be on your own, not necessarily with this.
And then we can do phonics programs, and I'll guarantee you some of them will be online, will be digital. I mean, and it's just that simple. You know, you read, you know, fluency is your problem. You read some of these research articles on fluency, and they'll tell you, well, our key was this, and I just picked phonics at random because I know that addresses fluency. But you don't have to know that. You just have to know what your most pressing need is. You type that in, you read the articles, they say, aha, this program over here or this particular instructional strategy is what will best address this. Then you simply bulldog one that and start your annotated bibliography. It's a simple process of how you got there. Aha. What we don't like in the business is a solution hunting a problem. I want to run this program. Well, what does it fix? I don't know, but I just want to run it because I like this program. Well, do you have that problem? Who cares? It worked great. They're doing great over here at this school. That's like going to some private school with a bunch of, you know, upper class kids that are wearing uniforms and think, oh, if we put them on our crowd, they'll behave like that bunch does. No, they won't. Not at all. So the notion here being, you've got to find solutions that you know have a chance to work in a school like yours. But you don't go into it saying, well, with phonics you don't know that. You need to read the literature to find out what people are doing in modern times to address certain problems. You know, I worked for a superintendent one time, and he had one program. That's all he knew. It had worked for him in a previous district, and he brought that program. Everybody's got to do it. Well, everybody's not, you know, Charlotte's a very diverse community. Schools are very much different. You came from a very small district where every school was exactly the same. Mostly military dependents, right off of a naval base, and everybody, the average income, the range was only probably $5,000 for the whole community. Everybody was exactly the same, and the program worked great for them. But we only had 30% of our population like that in Charlotte. The other 70% were like, what? Why would we be doing this? But that's all. He was a solution hunting a problem. You got to do it the other way. You have a problem and you hunt your solution. Don't, you know, and work your steps to get there. And that's what we're doing. We're teaching you how you work your way through your analysis to get to decisions on programs, treatments, or fixes to address your problem. You don't just sit around and talk about it and say, well, I saw somebody did this, or, you know, they're doing this over there. Does that fix it? Well, I don't know, but they're doing it and they're doing well over there. Well, but does it address your specific problem? There's got to be a research link that says, if you have this problem, somebody's tried this and this is what works. And here's a variety of those things that work, but pick the one that best fits your school. Every phonics program's not the same. Some work better with different groups of people. Some work with just emerging readers that are behind or delayed. Others work with non-English speakers better. You know, those are generally the two reasons why kids have fluency problems, but there can be more. What is the basis of your fluency problem? Do you have a large ESL population? Or is it you have a large population that's economically disadvantaged, and that's why they're not fluent? You got to know different programs address different types of problems. That's why we have you do a school profile. You need to know those kinds of things so that you can pick the program that's most appropriate to fix your problem. And that's what we're doing now. We're hunting that magic bullet here, that program that's most appropriate to fix our reading fluency problem. And so this is the system of how you work through that to get that. All righty.
Okay, Dr. Lamb, I think they know what they've got to do this week.
Yeah.
Let's talk briefly about what our expectations are, because next week they've got to do their collaborative Zoom video with their Zoom teams for task 1 and task 2 of the APSL. Can we talk about just briefly what our expectations are for that task? Okay. I can speak or you can speak, whatever you want us to do.
You go ahead.
Okay. Just remember, now we asked you last week that you should be doing a practice Zoom session with your teams. You should know who your team members are, be familiar with them. You should already have learned how to set up Zoom, and you should determine who the Zoom master is going to be for this first session. And you should be making those plans, because next week you have got to, one of your assignments is going to be that you've got to collaboratively work with your Zoom team. And the purpose of that is to talk about the task 1 and task 2 of the APSL. And we say task 1 and task 2, but it doesn't matter as long as it's about the APSL. You may even look at task 3, and because you're at that place, or ask questions about, task 4 as you're moving. We don't care. As long as it's the whole thing is about, your whole conversation is about the APSL task 1. And the thing is, it should be a time that you're sharing good collegial talk, and best practices. Everything that you talk about should refer back to or relate back to the language of the template, the APSL requirements. And those are the kinds of things that Dr. Stone and I we're going to be looking for that. We're going to be listening for the language that you use. We're going to be monitoring to see leadership opportunities as you're moving forward with this. We're going to make sure that, if there's 3 people in a group, then, there should be equal sharing in that group. Everybody should equally participate in the conversations. As a team, you come up with, what do we want we're not going to tell you everything. What, as leaders, you decide, what do we want? You may want to compose a group of questions or things that you want to look at ahead of time. Somebody can do that. But we're going to review your leadership role in this, and we're going to listen to your language and how well you can present yourself in this 15-20 minute video of APSL task 1 and 2. Anything else, Dr. Lamb?
Just stick to the rubric. We've given you a
Right.
template as to how to do a peer review. Just stick to the language of that rubric.
Exactly. It's there.
And don't make it personal.
No.
If you stick to the language of the rubric, it's harder. Not saying that they won't. It's harder for people to take offense if you make your cogent argument based on what the rubric expects you to do. And again, you have to unpack the rubric yourself. What that means is you have to study and know what the rubric means yourself in order to give somebody else advice. And so people say, well, why should I have to help somebody else? Well, you're actually helping yourself. The best way is, to learn something yourself is to teach it to somebody else. And that's basically what you're doing.
And we really, and it's not, we don't really care about your opinion. We want, what does the research say? And, as you're talking about the APSL, you should be able to say that, according to DeFore, and then you go on, because you should be able, that language should be coming out of your mouths now, because you're at that place. So that is what we're looking for. And so I would tell you, as a team, you need to go ahead and plan and get ready for that, and don't wait until the last minute. Dr. Lamb, case studies.
Read the case study and write 1 paragraph response for each of the questions. The Zoom master schedule sends out the link and records the case study Zoom session. During the case study Zoom session, each member shares their written response, and the group then engages in a scholarly discussion of their responses led by the Zoom master. Group consensus is desirable but not required in a scholarly discussion. Each candidate will write a one-page, two-part reflective summary of the case study and the case study Zoom session. Overview of the relevant parts of the case and takeaways from the scholarly discussion is what we're interested in that final reflection. Now, again,
I love you. Bye.
we want you to compare and your language, your scholarly discussion in language is based on what did I learn, what have I learned so far in this course and apply it to this case. What did I learn about PLCs, collaboration, norms, values? What have I learned so far and why is this case relevant to what I've learned at this point in my development in this initial course? And so let's quickly look at the case study itself. The questions are going to be, what do you think of the way James handled his particular situation concerning his limited background? What more could have been done to help the reading scores in his school? What additional resources could James utilize to help the school improve? What should he be sacrificing, if anything, by placing an extraordinary emphasis on the reading program? So you're looking for things like, what's the school improvement plan say? Is reading the only thing, or is that the most important thing? Did he form a PLC? Did they do research to figure out what the best ideas were? Did he involve the people involved, the reading teachers? Those are the kinds of things that you're going to be asking yourself as you read through the facts of this case. Apply the standard of, this is what we've been taught so far that you should be doing when you're trying to improve the scores in your school. Did this principal, this new principal, did he do those things? Did he use a closing the gap model? Was it data driven? Did he use PLC collaboration? Did he do the right things in his solution or his program treatment fix solution that he has in terms of his plan to address his scores? And so that's what we're looking for, is to evidence to us that you are learning that there is a process to school improvement. It's not a random process. It is a step-by-step process to get to school improvement. Dr. Stone's presentation tonight was great in that this is not optional. This is going to be the basis of what you do in terms of you've got to bring every subgroup in your school along. And there's a process. People say, boy, it's going to be hard. It is going to be hard. And it requires a lot of work. But there is a process that we're teaching you that will work if you work that process. Hope is not a plan. We are teaching you a plan to get scores, to improvement in your scores. If you'll remember, one of the first nights that I was with you, I told you, if you're one of those people that thinks that report cards are bad and that scores don't matter, this is the wrong place for you. Public school administration is about student performance, and it's measured, and you're held accountable. You don't teach a soul. They didn't hire you to teach kids. They hired you to get performance out of those teachers and kids. We're teaching you the process to do that. It's tried, this will work. We know it will work. The data and research and personal experience tells us this will work. Now, it's not popular. I'm not telling you everybody wants to work this hard. I'm not telling you that some of the decisions that you make will be popular in terms of this teacher works better with this group than that. And it's not about seniority. It's not about time. It's about talent. I used to have to tell teachers that all the time. Well, I've been here longer than her. I ought to get to teach what I want to teach. Not about time. It's about talent. She's a better teacher than you. Well, that's not fair. Fair's a place you go in the fall of the year and get a corn dog and ride the Ferris wheel. Fair is an early adolescent concept. Got no business in professional jobs. If you want that bunch of kids, get better. It's kind of like if you want to beat out the person in front of you, you got to get better. I mean, you don't have to be as blunt as I am, but I'm old. I don't have much time left. I don't have time for the niceties of life anymore. Your job is to get performance out of these kids, period. And you have to do what you have to do. You don't have to be rude or ugly or nasty. But when you look at it and data's sitting right there in front of you that this teacher does a better job than this teacher, then you better have this teacher in your addressing your most important areas. It's just that simple. It's not it's my turn, or I've been here longer, or I have seniority. That has nothing to do with it. It's about talent. Who can get the work out of kids? And there's a process. If you'll work your process, you'll be successful. If you don't, it won't work for you. And this is not about nice guys finish last or any of that. You can do this in a humanistic way. But you've got to remember, you're there for those kids. It's not to make adult lives comfortable. It's not the reason why you're there. Your job is to get that. If you can be kind and facilitate teachers along the way, that's just a bonus. But you've got to make some tough decisions. You've got to make some tough decisions, and they got to be based on data, research. What has been working? What have other people that look like us, what have they done? And so the last thing I'm going to leave you tonight is know who you are as a school and what potentially might work in your school. And don't pull a Harold. Pulling a Harold is, I worked with a principal a long time ago. His name was Harold. And he put a program in his school, and it went completely bad the first day. He was at a poor school, low wealth, uneducated parents. I mean, every kid there was on free and reduced lunch. It was the kind of community that if your parents didn't work, they were all day laborers. If they didn't work that day, you didn't eat that night. And we were just getting into the accountability model in the late 80s. And one of the things that was told is you got to quit suspending kids out of school if you want them to do better in school. And so his idea was we will stop suspending kids out of school. We'll suspend mama into school. Make mothers come and stay a whole day, or parents a whole day with their kid at school. And that will encourage kids to behave better. And so the very first mother that will work. And where this worked was at a private Catholic school in New England, where all the mothers were stay-at-home moms back in the day. But not in a place where if you don't work today, you don't eat tonight. So the very first mama that he suspended into school slapped the cafeteria manager and got in a big fist fight in the cafeteria when the cafeteria manager asked her to put her cigarette out, knocked the sneeze guard off the salad bar and turned it over. And the news media was there seeing this revolutionary new program, so they filmed it all. And it was on the local news at 6 that evening. Local cafeteria manager assaulted by angry mother. Details at 6. That was the first and last day of Suspend Mama into school. Now, if anybody had been paying attention, they could have predicted that probably what was going to happen, because Mama wasn't really happy that she wasn't going to have any money from working that day to buy something to supper for her kids that night. Programs like that there was not a goodness of fit. So that's why I refer to that as a Harold. Don't pull a Harold. Make sure that you know what your school looks like and what your capability is, and find programs that worked in other schools that look similar to yours. That's why we have you do that school profile, so you know what your school looks like. You know, that's why I said that I worked for a superintendent one time, and he thought that his program would work for everybody because it had worked for everybody in his previous district, which was very small. And didn't have but like 4 schools, and they were all alike, all around a military base, naval yard. They were all alike. Program worked in all 4. So when he came to Charlotte, he thought, well, they'll work in all 160 here. No, about 30. And that was it. And so, because that was the only thing that he knew, was not a goodness of fit for 70 or 80% of our schools. And so that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those programs that fit when you're out there, when you're doing that. Now, you apply that knowledge to this case study. Did he do his research? Did he find things that fit? Did he form a PLC? Did he do his data mining? Did he look at his EVOS to figure out who ought to be teaching what? Did he do all those things that you've been taught, or that are best practices to get performance in schools? Did he do any or all of those things? All right.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing those.
Do what, Dr. Lamb?
I said, I'm looking forward to seeing these. And
Yes.
so 2 tasks that you have is to do your video. You will have a Zoom session after you've read the case study and you've kind of written your response, 1 paragraph to each of those questions at the end. You get together and you share your responses. You don't have to have consensus, but you want to have a scholarly discussion. Did you see these things? And then you will do a reflective summary where you talk about what you learned. You review the relevant points of the case and whether or not the principal had addressed those relevant points. And then you will, what did you get? What did you take away from the Zoom session? Did you come away from the Zoom session saying, I've been enriched by the opinions of others and that I gained something from our collaboration? Or did you come away from your Zoom session thinking, the opinion of 1,000 idiots is still just the opinion of an idiot? I got nothing from this. But, one or the other or somewhere in between. What was the value of coming together in this collaborative fashion? That's what we're looking for here.
And this is not due until week 8, but we wanted you to go ahead and be thinking about it as you are beginning to work with your Zoom team so you can make plans for it. So,
All right.
okay. Okay, Dr. Lamb, are you through with case studies now?
I am through with case
Okay.
studies.
Okay, Dr. Stone.
I'm off this rant.
Okay, let's turn it back over to Dr. Stone, and
All right.
he's going to bring closure to things.
All right, if you stop sharing, I'll share real quickly. We want to thank everybody for being here tonight, for your questions and other comments as well. We want to make this very beneficial for you. If you will look, real quick, want to remind you, Thursday night there is a town hall meeting. Dr. Lamb, 7 o'clock. Is that right? Dr. Lamb, town hall for everyone, 7 o'clock on Thursdays. That's still.
We're doing a coaching session. Dr. Stedman's going to lead that, but I'm going to be there as well.
All right, so that's 7 o'clock. Right. 7 o'clock Thursday night. And I want to remind you, we received something from Dr. Crawford a little bit later on that I've added to our page, and it's about NC STAR. This is a program in North Carolina. It's called NC STAR. This is kind of lead you through your school improvement process as well as creating some plans. So take a look at that. Just click on NC STAR here. It'll take you through that. It's a couple of pages, but it's a great program that we use in North Carolina called NC STAR. Not sure if it's used in South Carolina. If it is, let me know. But that's a resource for you there as well. And that's it for me. Anybody want to add anything or ask any questions of us before we zoom out tonight?
Okay, no. Dr. Revis, any comments?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, well, we will see you guys on Thursday night, and we will have this session out to you later on tonight. Thank you so much.
Good night.
All right.
Good night, everybody.